my name's Dave Kruger. I'm the executive director of the Dialogue Institute, based at Temple University, also the co-editor of the Journal of Ecumenical Studies, all based here at Temple. And I first got involved with the Dialogue Institute maybe about 6 years or so ago. I was invited to come in and offer some historical tours, services, and some lectures to a program that they've been running for some years called the Study of the U.S. Institutes on Religious Pluralism. And this particular program brought young people from all over the globe, particularly from North Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. And I first got started offering lectures, tours about the background of kind of religious diversity in the United States, talking about immigration, introducing them to William Penn and how William Penn founded this colony that was much more open to religious diversity than other colonies during the colonial period. So I always just began, with this emphasis on the diversity of Pennsylvania and how unique it was in the American story, kind of giving birth to this religiously pluralistic nation. Almost 2 years ago now, I was hired as the executive director of the Dialogue Institute, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed working with this program, developing a number of programs, and working with my board to carry these things out.
And Majid, how did you come to the Dialogue Institute?
So I was introduced 13 years ago by a friend of yours and a friend of mine, the late Becky Watansky. She invited me to come to a dinner at her home to meet these young people from the Middle East who were here on the State Department funded program. It was the first program that the DI did, and I was there to meet them, and I was very intrigued. And Becky said, "Why don't you join the board?" And the rest is history. So I've been on the board about 13 years. I've been chair maybe 10 years, too long. I should have been booted out by now. But I most importantly, I've been a student of the work, and I have learned a tremendous amount about interfaith, intercultural dialogue, how to learn across differences. And one of the first things you learn when you come to the Dialogue Institute and you get involved in the training is that it's not just talking to one another, it is learning together. And it really, we teach our young leaders when they come, or our scholars when they come, we teach them about critical thinking, about deep listening, how to communicate openly and honestly and build trust. Without building trust, you can't expand understanding of one another. So those skills are so important. And I've told the founder, Len Swidler, he started this work 60 years ago. I said, "Len, I have been a beneficiary of your work, and I continue as a student. I may be on the board, but I continue as a student of the work and learn something new every day." So I've been very fortunate to be on the board, and it's become a big part of who I am.
David, what is the mission of the Dialogue Institute?
Well, the Dialogue Institute really exists to facilitate understanding, conversation, and dialogue across really religious differences, cultural differences, ideological differences, and seeking to build bridges to build better societies around the world. And we're deeply committed into, to promoting and equipping leaders to live in and to engage and to lead community groups within societies that struggle with diversity. Diverse societies are not necessarily a natural or an easy thing to navigate, and it takes a lot of skills and patience and those skills of dialogue that Majid outlined to be able to live together, to be able to strive for finding common ground, working across those differences, maybe bracketing differences when it's necessary. But that's really kind of the driving passion, is to advance understanding and dialogue across difference, and also being supportive of leaders who are working to build, peaceful and diverse and just societies.
Majid, can you speak how, for yourself and for Wellsprings, maybe how the Dialogue Institute matches some of Wellsprings' values and your values?
Well, as Unitarian Universalists and as Wellspringers especially, we very much embrace diversity and we celebrate diversity. We are searching for more meaning in life, and I mean, I think if you go to the beliefs and commitments of Wellsprings that were written about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now, just about every one of those resonates with the work of the Dialogue Institute. So for me, one institution builds upon the other, and they're very much in harmony. So it makes the Dialogue Institute a natural for me as a member of Wellsprings.
I know that's how we first met Majid, was through the Dialogue Institute and through Pecky. And ever since I became a member of Wellsprings, I wanted to share the Dialogue Institute with the member as Wellspring. And to my surprise, our founding minister actually did some workshops. David, were you there when Reverend Ken did some workshops for the Dialogue Institute? And what were the kind of things he brought to, because, he kind of embodies what Wellsprings is about. So what did he bring to the Dialogue Institute?
Sure, it was a few years ago, but this was, if I remember correctly, this was for our scholars who came to the U.S. These are basically mid-career level scholars of religion. They're also maybe faith leaders or community leaders and from all over the world. And when we put our program together, we really try to give these scholars, these visitors, a very diverse picture of the American religious landscape. So it's white and Black churches, Latino communities, mosques from different backgrounds, Judaism. And we also really want to emphasize the internal diversity within religious traditions. So we don't just say, okay, here's a Catholic church and that's all of Christianity. So we really want to give them a flavor of the incredible mosaic of Christianities, so to speak. And I remember when Reverend Weldon is the last name, right?
Ken Belden, yeah.
Right, Belden, yes. When he came to share with the group, I remember it was a really informative and helpful kind of historical overview of Unitarian Universalism, and the presence as well of these communities in these forms of thinking in the early colonial period as well. To recognize that, there is this kind of narrative that's becoming very popular and kind of grasped by certain political leaders today, which says all of the founders were evangelical Christians and they all thought this exact same way and they all were about advancing their own community. But I think Ken really helped us to get a sense of this kind of a diversity of perspectives, and really that it's a pioneering kind of like a movement that moved towards this idea of perhaps we can strive for more commonalities across these differences and to be able to reach across these different types of doctrines and beliefs and practices to be able to find some common ground. So I just remember that talk in particular was really helpful in getting the scholars to understand that dimension of the American life.
And Ken did talk about Wellsprings itself and how he was the founder and created a Unitarian Universalist congregation, yet with a different foundation, if you will. That there was a divine mention of the divine. There was, so he did kind of share how he helped create this congregation with its own unique characteristics. And many of these scholars from other countries were intrigued that, you mean, you can just create your own faith? And he said, yes. And it's worked well for 250 people or so that have joined.
David, can you talk about the principles of dialogue? Like, what does it mean to dialogue?
Sure, I can start it off a little bit, and then Magic can jump in. I mean, I've got the dialogue principles in front of me right now, just to make sure that I'm covering some of the ground. But one of the things that Len Swidler always emphasizes is that we approach dialogue with an attitude of willingness to learn. So just approaching it with that spirit of curiosity. And I feel like that can often be so lacking in our world today, where people are just kind of have hold on to the sense of this is the way that I'm supposed to see things, and my religious leader tells me how I should think. But what strikes me first of all is this sense of like curiosity is the starting point. Like, tell me more about what you mean when you say that the bread and the wine actually become the body and blood of Christ. Can you tell me, like, what does that mean for you? You know, asking those kinds of curious questions. And I think that that's a really core starting point. And I think that, you know, another dimension that sticks out to me is this ability to really approach dialogue from a very personal perspective. You know, so many times, you know, I've taught a lot of college courses at Temple University on introduction to world religions. And, you know, sometimes the way that we teach those courses, you know, there's a lot of this language around, well, the Buddhists believe this, or the Muslims believe this, that kind of a thing. And it becomes this kind of a, this conglomerate, you know, not real person that is supposedly believes all these things. But we all know that when we have real face-to-face conversations with people, the way that people incorporate these different types of beliefs and the practices and the way that they understand community is very, very unique to the individual. And what I think is so important about the dialogue principles is that it creates that space for people to really talk about what your beliefs and practices mean to me. Like, how does that play out in my life? And for me, that's a much more authentic form of dialogue when it's human to human, face to face, and not just abstract principle to abstract principle. It's that life of that humanizing that I think is so valuable.
Magic, do you have anything that you'd like to add to?
Sure, I can add a couple. I mean, it's important for you know, as Dave mentioned, for a Christian to describe what it means to be a Christian. It's important for a Muslim to describe what a Muslim believes it means to be a Muslim. In other words, people get into trouble when they start to describe the identity of the other when they aren't as familiar with it as the person who is being identified. Another one of the principles refers to not judging an entire faith by the actions of the worst of its members, and not judging your own by its ideals and comparing that to the worst actions of someone from another faith.
If I can add just one more, I think it's one of the ones, this is principle number 9. Principle number 9 talks about the willingness to be able to look critically at one's own tradition. I grew up in a pretty conservative Christian faith, which I was taught this kind of practice of apologetics, which was really the sense of how do we defend the faith? How do we, you know, put forth this notion that our religion is the best? And it becomes this kind of like a waterproof vision of your religion. And I think Len's principles really helps us to remind us that, you know, it's okay to be able to be self-reflective and to ask questions about our own tradition as we engage with others as well. This is really a kind of a healthy part of developing one's faith life.
Yeah. So
and something it's not one of the principles, but Len often repeats this, and really it describes how we encourage lifelong learning. And he's 93 and he's still teaching and learning. But Len says that nobody knows everything about anything.
I would like to pass on a little mantra, which I think communicates in its simplicity an extraordinary depth, because it is so obvious and therefore we never think about it. It goes like this: nobody knows everything about anything. Now, when you think about it, of course, no chemist would get up in the morning and say, well, I don't need to go to the lab today, I know everything about chemistry. Or no biologist would do something like that. No sociologist would ever wake up in the morning and say, well, I don't have to do any more surveys, I know everything there is about sociology. And certainly in economics, we would not want to make the claim we know everything about it. If we did, we wouldn't be in the disastrous situation that we humans are in about every 7 or 8 years. But in the field that is the most complicated and complex of all, namely religion, which of course attempts to provide an explanation of the ultimate meaning of life and how to live accordingly, based on some notion of the transcendent. Well, in that area, the most complex of all, there are billions of us humans who claim we know everything. But that, of course, is precisely the place where we should be most modest and humble in our claims. Why? Because nobody knows everything about anything.
2 more questions. And maybe I'll ask the second one first. How can people get involved? So there's a room full of people, and there's some people online watching this right now who are members of Wellsprings. What could they do? I know one of the things that I love that I saw is when you do have the visiting scholars, you have families volunteer to house them for the time that they were here. And I always thought that was amazing, and it's just eye-opening. But how can people get involved in the Dialogue Institute?
Certainly a number of ways that they can get involved. The challenges of living under the realities of COVID have placed some limitations on our ability to send participants with host families. We have to follow U.S. State Department guidelines as far as that is concerned. So that may be, we hope that it's a reality in the future, because that's been one of the most transformational, powerful experiences that these students have had, is staying in a home and making that personal connection with the family. So moving forward, we will keep you in mind and let you know if those opportunities do arise. We do have a group coming this October 6th through the 16th, some students that we worked with in a virtual program in summer 2021. They'll be joining us in this October for 10 days. And we'll host a couple of events where the general public will be invited to come to mingle, to engage in conversation, to hear some of the dreams and the plans and the projects that these young people have been working on since they've been spending their time with us at the Dialogue Institute. So we'll let you know about that as well. A couple other things might be of interest as well. We have a what we call a pluralism history tours program, where we invite the general public to come to the city of Philadelphia and take a walking tour with somebody on our staff, and to get a sense of the presence of diversity in early Philadelphia. You know, visiting the first synagogue, visiting a place where Catholics where it was the only place where they could practice freely during the early colonial period, the place where enslaved Africans got off ships, and we know that maybe a third of them came from parts of the Muslim world. So this incredible diversity that was an early presence in Philadelphia is a story that we love to tell at the Dialogue Institute, and to open up conversation about what it means to be an American today. So we invite you to visit our website, sign up, and enroll for the tours. We can even invite your church to come as a group. And we'd love to guide you through the streets of Philadelphia to help us see our communities in a new way. We also welcome financial support. We are looking for financial partners. A lot of our money has come through federal grants, but we're looking to develop financial partners that would be willing to invest into, so we can train guides to carry out these tours, so we could train facilitators to engage in some more of our Black Jewish dialogue and understanding programming. We're working with Rodney on a project with his wonderful documentary that's coming up. We would love to have financial sponsors to expand that programming as well. So we're always open to volunteers. We're open to folks who want to be financial supporters, and we do encourage you to reach out to us, and we would love to partner with you in any way you feel led.
Great. And can you, I sort of, I asked backwards, but talk about the program. You hinted about it a little bit, but when the visiting scholars come and they're coming from monotheistic cultures, can you talk about that a little more and maybe go a little bit deeper into it, like what actually happens? I mean, you did talk about they go to visiting churches, but like it's just so amazing. I got to experience, I think, for 3 years because I was following them around with cameras.
What I would add, it's just amazing to bring them together for the, in the first case, and that, we've had 20 at a time from places like, Cameroon, Nigeria, Albania, Russia, China, Peru, Brazil, really, an amalgamation of countries, and just to see them interacting and meeting each other and learning about each other, that in and of itself is an amazing experience. And then we introduce them to all of what the Dialogue Institute presents. But go ahead, Dave.
Sure. The program is either a 5-week or a 6-week program where they'll come the first couple of days. It's an orientation to Philadelphia. They'll take our obligatory William Penn's Introduction to Philadelphia tour. They'll learn about the foundation of the colony. We'll talk about the origins of democracy, the conversations and the debates around who should have access to have a democratic voice and who were excluded. We talk about racial justice, social justice. We bring in a number of lecturers and speakers on a variety of different topics. We've had lecturers who come and give like basic introductions, because if you're coming here as a Buddhist monk from Mongolia, you don't know the difference between a Muslim, a Mennonite, and a Mormon, and you need some kind of orientation to the American religious landscape to be able to understand, to gain a base level of religious literacy about these other traditions throughout the world. So we combine those introductory lectures and conversations and dialogues with actual on-site visitations to mosques, synagogues, temples, all throughout the Philadelphia region. We also include study tours where we'll take the young people or the scholars. We've taken them to Arizona, to Minnesota, to Virginia, so they can see a different landscape. They can see, how people talk about religious difference in Minneapolis versus how they talk about it in Philadelphia, and to see the different immigrant groups that have gravitated towards the different parts of the country. And we also bring them to the heart of the U.S. Capitol, visiting, walking the halls of the U.S. Capitol, visiting the Holocaust Museum and having really deep conversations about what does it take for us to be a more humane, to foster humane societies where we respect minority rights, where we seek to stand up and defend those who are vulnerable in our societies. And we also have lectures and conversations around very much ethical topics, like how do different religious traditions engage issues around human sexuality, gender identity. These can be very difficult conversations, especially for folks coming from very conservative parts of the world. It might be the first time where they've had a very open conversation about gender and sexuality. So all in all, we really feel like they get a broad, introduction to American life, the challenges and opportunities of living in and leading diverse, religiously diverse societies, and also equipping them with the very practical skills of how do we talk across difference, how do we develop programs and projects and scholarly endeavors that can actually bring about real change in the world. So we're really excited about empowering these visitors in that way.
Awesome. This is great. Do either of you have anything you'd like to say in closing? Majid, is there anything you'd like to say to everybody at Wellsprings who's watching right now about the Dialogue Institute?
Well, I certainly would say come and visit us, and we'd love to show you more. It's been a blessing in my life, and I'd love to share it.
And David, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Just remain curious, keep asking questions, seek those relationships outside of your comfort zone. It's both intellectually stimulating and spiritually enriching. And my hope is that you can experience that with us sometime.
Great. Thank you both for doing this.